Hello and welcome everyone to the annual Big Arabic Day.
Or in Arabic, مرحبا بكم في اليوم الكبير للغة العربية.
My name is Furqan Mehdi and I'm a second-year biological systems engineering major with an emphasis in biomedical engineering and a minor in Arabic. I am also the founder and the president of the Middle Eastern and North African Student Association here on campus.
And my name is Omar Al-Amri. I'm a senior majoring in marketing. I'm currently an intern in We Are Nebraska, and I'm a web designer on East Campus. And we're here happy to be the host for this Big Arabic Day of 2022.
So, the Big Arabic Day is an event that the Arabic program hosts every year to highlight important topics regarding the Arabic language, the Middle Eastern culture, and other Arabic matters. UNL has an amazing UNL Arabic program, an intensive summer program, and courses on the Middle Eastern culture.
Everyone, please get your hummus and popcorn and a monkey named Abu ready, as me and Omar would like to take everyone here today on a magic carpet ride to discuss all the important things that UNL offers when it comes to the Arabic language. As we begin the magic carpet ride, Omar, I would like to ask you, as an Arab student, why did you decide to study Arabic if it's a language that you already speak?
That's a great question, Furqan. So I speak Arabic, as she said, and I come from the Middle East, exactly from Oman. So I'm a Muslim, I pray 5 times a day and all of that. And when I first arrived here in the US, I didn't feel confident about my English skills. So I started listening to music like rap, I started dressing differently, and I started mingling with English speakers, and I invested a lot of my time and effort into the Western culture. And one day, I was walking with my friend on campus, and I saw a woman wearing hijab. And I told my friend, I was like, bro, what is she wearing, that veil? That looks so fashionable. And he was like, bro, that's the hijab. Did you forget that you're Muslim? And I was like, yeah, I need to take some Arabic classes. So that's why I'm here. So speaking of the Arabic language, how has the Arabic program at UNL helped you stay more connected to your culture?
I decided to minor in Arabic for the same reasons as you. However, I did not forget about the hijab because that would be bad since I'm a hijabi myself. But I left the Middle East when I was 12 years old and in middle and high school. I really missed that connection with my culture. So coming to UNL, it was very exciting to finally connect with people from my region again. And the UNL Arabic program has really helped me a lot teach everyone about the beauty of the Middle East. But one more thing. Why would you encourage students at UNL to minor in Arabic or take classes from the Arabic program?
Because it's more than just learning the Arabic language or just the Arabic culture in general. You learn more about celebrities in the Arabic world, women in the Arabic world, and even love stories, which were so interesting. There's a story that is called Layla and Majnun, or Majnun and Layla, and Majnun means crazy. It happened hundreds of years ago, where Qais was so in love and obsessed with Layla, but Layla's father rejected Qais's marriage proposal, and Qais went crazy. So, this happened hundreds of years ago, and I was so, intrigued of, I feel like I can be crazy too, because he couldn't, call her. There was no Facebook. He couldn't, text her and say goodbye, I'll see you in heaven, at least, nothing. So, I would be crazy too. Interesting stories. So, speaking of Arabic courses, what was, your favorite Arabic course?
That's a hard question, but I would also choose the class with Dr. Abla about love, feminism, and sex in the Arab culture. I did enjoy all of those Arabic love stories. They raised my standards on love, and it created a lot of productive debates between me and Omar, and I think Dr. Abla can agree on that, so that's why it was my favorite course. But now, we would like to pass the mic to Hasan al-Mukhriq to finish this magic carpet ride. Hasan is a lecturer of Arabic Studies at the Department of Modern Languages and Literature at UNL. He is a PhD student in the Department of Political Science, and his areas of interest are relations, international relations, comparative politics, and Middle Eastern and Islamic studies. He graduated from the University of Nebraska at Omaha with a bachelor in international studies and a minor in political science. He also received a master's degree in political science from UNO, and Hassan has a passion for academia and social entrepreneurship. Hassan is trying to build a bridge between the culture divides and make people understand the point of views of others. The University of Nebraska has provided him with many opportunities to embrace his academic and leadership skills. He is also the advisor of the Middle Eastern and North African Student Association. So please, let's welcome Hassan.
Thank you. Thank you, Furqan. Thank you, Omar. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Abla Hasan and her new book on pain and suffering, and which I'm hoping today to introduce it to you through our conversation. We will talk about for an hour today, and then we will open the floor for Q&A. Again, thank you so much for your time. And as an appreciation, we have a small gift for you, Arabic sweets. You don't want to miss that. So please make sure that you have a ticket and keep it please with you to the end of the event. Also, we have a flyer with a special discount if you would like to buy the book. I believe you want to read the book after the conversation today, so you will have the discount on the flyer. First of all, let me introduce my guest. Dr. Abla Hasan is an associate professor of a practice of Arabic language and culture and the coordinator of Arabic Studies program at UNL. She holds a PhD in philosophy of language from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in 2013, MA in philosophy as a Fulbright grantee from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in 2009. Dr. Hassan obtained her BA in philosophy from Damascus University, Syria in the year of 2000, followed by a diploma of higher studies from Damascus University in 2001. She is a native speaker of Arabic. Her teaching and research focus on Arabic studies, or Qur'anic studies. Yes, thank you. Qur'anic studies, Qur'anic hermeneutics, Islamic feminism, and Arabic studies. She has published with international journals like Brill, Analyse, Al-Manara, Eligos, and other peer-reviewed international journals. She is the author of Decoding Egalitarianism of the Quran in 2019, and the author of On Pain and Suffering, A Qur'anic Perspective. A teacher, a researcher, and a public speaker. In addition to teaching for Nebraska University, Hassan course Women in the Quran was offered to Maryland University, Rutgers University, Penn State University through DISC, and to Nazwa University in Oman through Nebraska's Global Virtual Project. Dr. Hassan's scholar engagements include numerous national and international paper presentations, including 50 invited talks and more than 40 media interviews and citations. Dr. Abla Hasan, congratulations first on the new publication of your book.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And let me start by asking you the question on the story behind writing this book. What motivated you to write a book on pain and suffering?
First of all, thank you so much for the introduction, and
Sure.
thank you for the hosts of our event today for the wonderful introduction to the Arabic program. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Hassan.
Thank you, Dr. Abla.
And allow me first probably to forward your question to my audience. It's a book on pain and suffering, as the title, from a Qur'anic perspective, as it's clear from the title. So if I ask you, have you ever heard the expression, life is unfair or life is not fair? Raise your hand. If you ever felt life is not fair at times, raise your hand, please. I think this explains the book. So I believe the problem of pain and suffering is a shared problem. Mm-hmm. It's a shared experience of all of us. And this expression that I started from is commonly said, but we rarely think about it. Of course, the book is providing a Qur'anic perspective on the problem. It addresses the problem of theodicy, whether God is fair in what he decides, and how, questioning God, questions related to that. So it's a shared experience of all of us, I would say, Hassan. I'm from Syria, so starting from 2011, and the ongoing tragedy in Syria, I noticed that number one question on social media was the question, where is God? Where is God? Like, and every winter, let alone the rest of the year, every winter when it snows, I know we complain about snow here in Nebraska. I do that all the time. But it's different when it snows in refugee camps. And we see all these images and people go back to the question, where is God? And what alarmed me more was the pandemic, COVID-19. And there is nothing new about COVID-19 other than the question now is asked on a global scale. Everyone are asking the question, regardless of their ethnic background or religion or citizenship, what's going on? And I was alarmed by some scholars and some papers in the field arguing for the pandemic as a divine punishment from God. Mm-hmm. And arguing that God is basically unhappy with humanity, with all of us at once. One of the basic arguments in the book that I reach from, based on a hermeneutical investigation of the Quran itself, is the argument, or let's say the conclusion, that our pain and suffering happens due to our divine nature, not due to our sinful nature. So we suffer because we're divine, we're deputies on earth, we're tested. In other words, we suffer because we don't deserve to suffer, not because we deserve to suffer. So a short answer to the question on COVID-19, and it's a global question, but also it's a personal question that we all ask ourselves from time to time. And it can boil also to the problem of evil. Why does God allow all this evil in the world? Now, while I'm saying these words, I can think also of the kids in Ukraine. So there's always something going on. But the same question, the recurring question, keeps coming back. Where is God? Do we deserve what's happening to us? And how can we make sense of it? Pain and suffering, I argue in the book, is essential human experience. It's not accidental. It's essential. It happens to all of us. It's common to all of us. And it's existential. So it's part of, it's woven in the same fabric of our existence. A long answer to your question, Hassan.
No, if you have more, we can listen to it.
I'm gonna leave it at this, but since 2011, I had the question in mind.
So after the spring break, you start to think more about the pain and suffering. Okay, Dr. Abla, in your book, you argue of rethinking the lost divine status of a human as a way to solve the problem of pain and suffering. You even introduce a new reading to the story of creation itself. Could you please explain more about this?
Thank you for your question. This comes as an essential part of rethinking the story of creation itself, and which will lead to reclaiming our lost, I would say, divine status as God's own gods on earth, as I argue, or God's deputies. It's not a new reading to the Quran. The reading was already proposed by some scholars. And the story of creation, I argue, the story of what is known as the fall of Adam, is one of the stories that we think like we start our basic religious education with. We think of it as probably a cute story, but it's, as I always argue, the way we introduce it in Sunday schools is sexist and degrading. And rereading the story, at least according to one opinion in the Islamic heritage and supported by the Quranic text, reveals another details. Long story short, and I know I'm not going to be fair in introducing the whole research today, but for those interested, you will find the evidence in the book, because it's basically a linguistic arguments for the new view or the new reading. So unlike the traditional story, which is a hybrid biblical Quranic story that replaced the authentic Quranic story, another marginalized view argued for the first Jannah, or the first place where Adam was placed at, as an earthly garden and was not paradise. Rashid Rida, and I know Professor Simon Wood will be interested in this, Rashid Rida referred to the story as a scholarly debate from the beginning. So scholars in Islamic history debated whether Adam was created in an earthly garden or in paradise, and then got dismissed from. And I know now, because we think that only one story made its way to mainstream Islam, we think of it as the only story. And this is the traditional story, which says basically, I know all of you are aware of it, that Adam was created in paradise. He sinned once, and as a punishment, he was dismissed from paradise along with his wife, along with Iblis, the devil himself, and was sentenced as a punishment along with his offspring to live on earth like almost forever till the hereafter. This is only one reading of the story. The other reading of the story, and I argue the Quranic reading of the story, and we find it in the history of Islamic exegesis, ascribed vaguely to some of the Ahlul Bayt. Some ascribe it to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. So according to this view, it says that Adam was created in Jannah, and Jannah as a Quranic term can refer to any garden. So he was created in paradise. I argue with that. But he was created from earth to live on earth. Adam sinned in an earthly garden, and he repented, and God accepted his repentance. He was dismissed only from an earthly garden. And the story is narrated in the Quran, not to demonize Adam. I always argue that we owe Adam a big apology, the way we owe Eve a big apology when we follow just the traditional narratives. It is said, the story, to provide hope for the offspring of Adam. Because like our father, we're gonna all make mistakes from time to time. So the story is not told to ignite feelings of unworthiness and like we're punished forever, but to provide hope. The story ended by the repentance of Adam and by God accepting his repentance unconditionally. And it ends only by an individual punishment to Adam to leave his earthly dwelling. So long story short, we're here for a mission. And Adam was placed as a deputy in chapter 2 in the Quran. We read, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. I'm going to place a vicegerent or a deputy on earth. And to act as a deputy, you're tested. You're tested with pain and suffering. You're tested with everything that hurts you. You're tested with your own sins. The new reading of the story provides hope that it's only returning back to God, having more merit on yourself. The more you suffer, the more you should have faith in yourself, because it's only testing your faith, testing your merit. Paradise was never a place that we were supposed to be at from the beginning. It's a merit-based place that we return to after proving our divinity. And by acting, and I know it's a huge responsibility, by acting as God's own deputies on earth, by acting in a divine way as much as you can. I hope this answers
Thank you,
the
Dr.
question.
Abla. It's a clear answer.
The argument is a heavy linguistic argument. The evidence are there in the book. But this is a little bit about the new, highly marginalized reading of the story of creation.
Thank you, Dr. Abla. Also another question. Many people might think that pain and suffering is a test. And so what explains the pain and suffering of children or animals, for example? Let me start the question by answering ask you the question about the children, then we will talk about animals, if you don't mind.
Yes, yeah, sure. Thank you for your question, Hassan. And I know this complicates the matter even more, because if we're tested due to our divinity, due to having free will, due to the need to prove our merit, so how can we explain the pain and suffering of children? Children can't be tested. And this is a huge question in philosophy and in theology. Now, there are hints in the Quran that can tell us a little bit about children. For example, in chapter 81, we read one verse that I'm going to stop very quickly with, just to provide a background of the argument without providing the full argument. In chapter 81, we read, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ. When the infanticide, newborn baby girl is asked, what did she do بأي ذنب قتلت, to be killed? And we all know that this verse, it's a well-known verse. It's addressing a pre-Islamic Arabian habit of killing newborn baby girls. Now, while the verse is known almost by everyone, it's very rarely thought about with the question. Like, and this is, by the way, to provide the background about the verse. This is a description of one of the scenes of the hereafter, or the day of the resurrection, or the day of judgment, when everyone are gathered for judgment. And the question is, when the newborn baby girls are asked what they do, or whether they did something wrong to deserve what happens to them, and of course, this is not the intention of the question. It's a question to allow them to speak for their own rights. My question, do newborn babies talk? Right? I see like some of you are shaking. Yeah, they don't talk. So how come the Quran, which speaks a miraculous, accurate language, describes those girls as defending their rights? I argue based on this verse that no one is or can enter the hereafter as a minor. We all enter the hereafter as complete human beings. Complete human beings. And therefore we can link this to the problem of pain and suffering, because the children don't share with us the responsibility. They're not tested, but they share with us the divinity, our divinity. And pain and suffering, which is observable, it's an empirical observation when it comes to children. In fact, the children suffer way more than adults. How can we explain that? Because they share with us our divinity. They're rewarded in the hereafter. Probably they enter the hereafter not as minors, but as full, complete human beings, where they can get ranks up. They're going to be rewarded for being patient with whatever happens to them. So children can't be punished because they're not tested, but they can be rewarded for their patience with their submission to whatever happens to them. Another place in the Quran, a very vague place in the Quran, known as Alam al-Dhar, the Adam world. We know very few about that world. But it refers to a pre-existing condition of humans before our physical existence, in which they're introduced to God. Some speak about the religious gene, or the innate feeling of God, or knowing God. According to this interpretation of Alam al-Dhar, a place vaguely we know probably nothing about from the Quran, but we know that human souls are invited to the worldly life. They're not only created for the worldly life, they're invited, which means our worldly life can be only one phase. We start in a pre-existing condition that we know very little about as complete souls. We get invited, we leave to enter the hereafter as complete souls as well. And this explains probably the pain and suffering of children. They're complete divine beings just like adults. And again, I won't be able probably to provide more, but I hope you get interested with this, and I'm going to be here also for questions from you. But this is basically the idea.
Thank you, Dr. Abla. So what about you explained the pain and suffering of children, but also we see like pain and suffering for animals.
Right.
So what explains that?
You go with tough questions, and thank you for that, because now the pain and suffering of animals, I understand, is going to complicate the matter even more, because I argued for the pain and suffering of children due to sharing with us our divinity. They're as divine as human beings. They're created as the most honored beings because they're the offspring of Adam. But what about animals then? Animals don't share with us free will. Animals are not tested. Animals can't be punished, right? But again, it's easily observable that animals suffer pain and hardship even more than we do. And many times it's because of us. Animals are subjugated to us. We mistreat animals sometimes. Sometimes it's accidental. Sometimes we slaughter animals to eat animals. So how can we explain what happens to animals? Another clue in chapter 81, in the same paragraph which explains the day of resurrection or gathering, it says, وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ, which means when the beasts are gathered, when the animals are gathered. And again, this is another scene in the Quran for the day of resurrection, a day of judgment, a day for everyone to argue for their own rights and receive them. Animals, according to my reading to this verse, and to a marginalized view that was proposed by Al-Mu'tazila, the rationalists in the Islamic history. Unfortunately, a lot of their views got just marginalized for reasons more than we can explain now, beyond what we can explain now. They argued for a resurrection of animals, and they argued for animals joining the hereafter, because God is just and God won't accept anyone to be wronged or anything to be wronged, including animals. So probably I would say, just like human beings, there is another chapter for animals in the hereafter. So maybe this is one way of thinking this problem. And just a little bit background about animals in the Quran. My students from Global Islam Current Debates, they know that because we discussed that. Animals are a big deal in the Quran, a big deal in the Quran. And many times, stories in the Quran are shared from an animal perspective. So there is the hoopoe as a hero in the story of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. We know the story as narrated by the hoopoe, who not only provides his viewpoint, but he judges the people in the land of Queen of Sheba and provides logical reasons for his argument. An ant, as well, in another story of Solomon, was described providing an advice to the rest to go back to their homes since Solomon's army was passing. And I know this complicates things even more for us, because now we have not only animals recognized in the Quran, but we have the stories recognized as told by animals. So this provides a window to the consciousness of animals. And therefore, the question of the pain and suffering of animals is a question that we need to ask. And I find in the heritage of Al-Mu'tazila a lot of things that didn't make their way to mainstream Islam. But when we go back to the Quran, because Al-Mu'tazila were strictly Qur'anic in their methodology, strictly Qur'anic, we find confirmations in the Quran to that type of research and to these types of answers.
Thank you, Dr. Abla. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I have actually more questions, but I would like to keep it for the audience.
Thank you for the questions, Hassan.
Thank you. So,
And I hope the audience questions won't be as hard as your questions,
hopefully it
so
will
I
be
can
more
do a
harder.
good job addressing at least some of the questions.
Okay, thank you. With this, our conversation ends today. This book, I believe, a book you would like to read. I already got my copy from Dr. Abla, and I got a signature on it too. Thank you. So before we end, and before the gifts, and before the questions, the question, I would like to thank you all for attending the event today again, and we will start with the questions, please.
It's the microphone. Any questions? I actually have a question. That's interesting.
Go ahead.
So, as like a grown man, do I get awarded for like going through stuff?
Of course, all of us. All of us.
So not just like babies.
The only difference is you can, how to put it? So you're tested, and I know this is scary, but according to my reading of the Quran, you can fail the test, right? I know, it's scary, but for children, there is no way they can fail the test. They can only go up, right? They can be awarded, can be rewarded, right? Because they share with us the aspect of being divine, right?
Yes. Great answer. Any questions? Start with the second one.
Hi, I was wondering what you think of if someone has pain and suffering so much so that they can't handle it themselves, if it leads to stuff like events like suicide, self-harm, or hurting other people. Like, what is the perspective in your argument on that?
Yeah, thank you for your question. And I do believe that many of us mishandle pain and suffering because we're not prepared enough for pain and suffering. We're not told the whole story. I know we like to think that all things are gonna be fine. We like to tell ourselves this and tell our kids and our students, right? But sooner or later, an empirical shared experience, no, right? Life is tough, we all know that. So it's better to be prepared, than just to expect only the best to happen. This is not an argument for a gloomy approach to life, but you need to seek help, of course, from everyone, but mainly the help should come from inside, from not losing trust in yourself and questioning yourself for why is this happening to me? Is there something like wrong I did or said or something wrong about me? Because there is no more toxic, I would say, self-loathing statement than the statement we can make when we go inside to explain pain and suffering. We should have more faith in ourselves, in our merit, when we get afflicted with things we don't like. It's not the opposite way. Sometimes you hear it from others, right? You deserve what happened to you, or unfortunately, some religious arguments I like that. I've heard at least some religious arguments like that some people deserve what happens to them. Nothing can happen, according to the Quran, my reading of the Quran, in the worldly life as a punishment from God. It's only a way to prove your merit. It's only a way to prove your merit. I hope this answers your question. Thank you.
I think we can get 2 more questions, probably. Okay.
Okay, it is a very good pleasure to be asking you this question.
Thank you, Yaman.
So I wanted to ask you, based on your very good book, why are young children more like unlucky than grown adults, based on your book?
And I'd like to introduce you to my hero, Yaman, my son. Thank you for your question. The question on the pain and suffering of children, I agree with you, Yaman, is way more problematic to us to explain and to understand than the pain and suffering of adults. But yet, we see more pain and suffering when it comes to children. We see more of that. But again, this is because of their divine nature. Because of their divine nature. Because they're not less divine than adults.
So you mean like what they are compared to adults exactly?
Basically, yes. They're pretty much the same. Thank you, Yaman.
We'll get one more question. Can we get one more?
Two more? Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Abla, and
Hi.
hello, Dr. Hassan. I just wanted to ask, so why in Islam, like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was considered the best person in Islamic history, and why would it be that he may have suffered or had the most hardships, even though he's considered the best person for us?
Excellent question. Thank you for attending as well. So the Prophet Muhammad, as described by Aisha, his wife, she said when she was asked once about him, she said he was a walking Qur'an, a walking Qur'an. So all his deeds, his character is basically he's a role model. And it's the fate of all human beings to have hardship. As I mentioned in the beginning, hardship is not accidental, it's not occasional, it's existential and essential to prove our merit. And Prophet Muhammad is not an exception. To the opposite, he's a role model in that. And this reminds me of Prophet Job as well, Ayub, and a story that anyone seeking wisdom on pain and suffering in the Quran should read. Job complained to God about his hardship, not because he did something wrong, right? He didn't do anything wrong or he didn't do anything to correct his behavior and to go back to God, but he saw in God the refuge from his pain and suffering. And this is the big lesson from the story of Job. We should never internalize pain and suffering and go inside to look for the reason for it. Instead of questioning God, something we do all the time, all of us, I think, at one point. Because here's the thing. I know that we're supposed not to start questioning God until something very radical happens, like a tsunami or an earthquake. But this is only, the difference is in the scale of the pain and suffering. But inequality in life and hardship happens from day one. From the day we're born, we're unequal in all aspects. And the gap never stops, it keeps widening. So our life is nothing but continuous opportunities to prove your merit. And it's ongoing hardship. And I'm not saying it in a way to surrender, to motivate ourselves to surrender and to say to pain and suffering and to say there is no hope, just to be strong, tough, and ready for it, to understand the core of it. In the Quran, it summarizes the meaning of our existence. There's a verse that says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. We created human beings in hardship. So you're surrounded by hardship. You should never question yourself, your merit. You should see in God, you shouldn't question God, I would say, because you're going to be probably wasting your energy and your time by going against what happens to you. You should accept and challenge what happens to you and move forward with it. Move forward with it.
Maybe we can also get a question from the back if anyone is. Oh, okay.
So when you talk about children suffering, you use the term divine nature, and I just want to know what your definition or how you would describe that as to be.
Excellent question. And this question goes back to the story of creation itself. So I argued for a new understanding of the story of Adam and Eve. Instead of thinking it of one story, there are two stories. The story of creation, which took place in paradise, and the story of the first sin of Adam, which took place on earth, on an earthly garden. Unfortunately, what happened, the two stories got merged together, mixed together, confused together as one story. But if we see them as two different stories, the first story is all about our divinity. We know about the scene of creating Adam in paradise, and it's a very famous scene, but maybe I can go over a little bit some of the details. When according to the Quran, when God created Adam, before he announced that he's going to send him down as a deputy, right? He introduced the new being to the audience in paradise, which happened to be angels and the devil, which took the name of Iblis. And he said, when I breathe from my own soul into this being, you prostrate to this being. And prostrating to Adam was not to worship Adam, but to acknowledge the divinity of Adam. To acknowledge, because what would breathing God's soul into you mean other than making you divine? And making you divine for a reason, to send you down earth so you act as a God, right? So, and therefore, all human beings, according to the Qur'anic criteria, we share some of God's divinity, which is translated to being provided the power of a free will, to be able to take decisions. And for God, this is translated to, and this explains a little bit also the problem of evil, it's translated into the full respect of people's decisions. So whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, according to the divine contract between God and Adam, according to chapter 2 in the Quran, God won't intervene to stop what you do here. It's postponed to the day of judgment. And this is part of the divinity of Adam. The scene is I go into the details of the scene of creation in the book. There are so many interesting points, why was Adam only assigned this divine assignment, right? We know, according to the traditional story, that Iblis or the devil revolted against this decision. And he said to God, I'm better than him, and he refused to prostrate for Adam. He was asked, therefore, to be dismissed from paradise. We know that the angels, they tried to negotiate finalizing that, but due to their angelic nature, they did it in a polite way. Probably they were trying to bring God's attention that we can't be better than Adam, but it ended with choosing Adam and his offspring as divine deputies. So people's divinity is due to having God's nature inside of us and inside each one of us.
Can we get more questions, or?
I'm okay if we have time for questions.
We'll get to one more question from the back, if we have any.
One more maybe for the
Okay,
time.
Dr. Wood.
Hi, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Looking forward to reading it. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the specific phrase, caliphs or deputies on the earth? And the word, it's a little bit elusive to many people, and just elaborate a little bit more on that.
Sure. And I know it's going to be challenging from a fluent speaker of Arabic like Dr. Simon Wood. So, إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة, the reason for our existence. I'm going to place a caliph on earth. Now, caliph, the term itself, made it its way to politics to mean a ruler. But in the Quranic term as caliph, one who's assigned all the duties of or assigned the duties of another person, right? He comes after the person. So when it's said that we're placed on earth as Khalifa, so you're replacing, in a temporary way probably, God on earth. Now, scholars had debated the meaning of it. Some of them said that the term Khalifa on earth is just due to human beings working or successing each other, so generation after generation. Another team of scholars said no, it's a human, and this is the view I adopt personally. It's working as a vicegerent or a deputy assigned by God Himself, or representing God or the divine authority on earth, I would say. Thank you for your question.
We can end with one. Every time I say one last question. Okay, one, I think Juliet got a question here before. Okay, Omar.
I had actually a couple of questions, but because pain and suffering is not equal across humanity, so is my reward in heaven depends on how much pain and suffering I've experienced?
I would say that the responsibility, according to the Quran, is very personal and very individual. And the journey is very personal and individual. So it's going to be different from person to person. I would say yes. It will be in accordance to what happens to you. Of course, I'm not God, you need God to sort out these types of questions. But according to the little we know from the Quran, the journey is very personal. And there is no excuse for decisions you make, good or bad, in the Quran. There is no excuse for following others, because you will be judged personally and individually. And always hardship is just an opportunity to go up. I take it always as an opportunity to go up. Now, as a teacher, to give a very shallow example, when I think very high of my students, and I'm sure you do that, Hassan, as well, we give them hard questions because we know they're going to be able to address those questions. Probably it's the same. The more merit you have, probably the more challenges you will get. Maybe it's not the case. Maybe you're more conscious about those challenges. But are we rewarded for hardship? I would say, according to the Quran, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all. I think we have the gifts, so please stay patient with us while we. Omar, I think you will get the numbers.
Give them a round of applause again. Thank you so much for the discussion.